Hi, guys, and welcome to episode 24 of SEO Tales. And I'm joined by Mr. Itamar Blower as I'm going to say it again. Why the hell are we introducing ourselves? Same introduction. I'm not even going to introduce myself. But this week we're going to be talking about the benefits of SEO conferences. And I'm going to kick off with a quick story, which I just told Itamar off air. So I've got a friend, Gary Wilson, who owns getmelinks.com. So he's a local chap to me. He was doing client work, several years ago. He's only a young guy. I think he's only 22 or something just now. So he was doing client work a few years ago. And I said to him, like, we come down to Brighton SEO. He's like, no way, and all that, no way. And I'm like, come on. And we priced it up. So the cost of the ticket, the train, and a night or two in the hotel came to around 400 quid. And Gary's like, there's no way I'm paying 400 quid. That's too much to listen to people talking shite and all that. Now, he'd never been to Brighton SEO before. I don't think he'd been to an SEO conference full stop. And I think that is the perception that a lot of people have. It's just a load of a waffle. Anyway, I somehow managed to convince him to come down. And we had a great time, great conference, networking, introducing them to kind of more experienced people. And I think even Gary now would tell you that was probably the best 400 quid he spent in his life. Now, obviously, going to conferences, it's all about who you meet, how you do it, and that's what I want, or what we want to get across in this episode today. It's not just about going to Brighton SEO, sit and listen to the tracks and going home. You're going to get little to no value from that sequence of events. And I know, Itamar, you're not hugely experienced in the conference circuit, and you probably have a similar perception maybe to Gary, where you're just like, is it worth the money? Is it worth the hassle? Is that the kind of thing you think? Because I know you've been to Brighton SEO once, right?
Yeah,
and
so
you're going to tell me, right? So let me guess here first before you say any more. You went to Brighton, you get the train there first thing in the morning. When the conference finished, you jumped the train back up the road, right?
Yeah, that's correct. I mean,
now I'm just going to say that is the wrong way to approach Brighton. Now, what's your perception of Brighton? How was your day? What is in your head now about SEO conferences?
right. So the story of when I went to Brighton, and I've only been there once. So the one time that I went, it was, how they do that raffle for free tickets.
Yeah.
So, I was agency side when, they were doing the raffles. It was approaching, a couple months before April or whenever it was. And so we managed to get like 2 free tickets. And so I went with, a friend, a colleague of mine. So we went up there, and, it's kind of like the thing where you approach, I think if it's your first time going to an SEO conference, the only things you think about really is SEO. You don't really think too much about the other aspects of, networking, meeting people, having a good time, that kind of stuff. It wasn't really on my mind. It wasn't really on my agenda, when it really should have been. So, in terms of what I learned from that is like, yeah, that was the wrong approach. And obviously I didn't plan it out. I didn't plan to stay there a night. I got the train from London in the morning, everything finished. Then I went, talks finished. Then I took the train back. And like you say, I felt like I missed out on a lot of value, probably more of the value that I would have got if, I would have stayed longer. There were parties, sure, like that's cool. But it's also the networking as well, which I feel like I missed out a lot. Like, I mean, don't get me wrong, like it was really good for me to go there anyway. Like I had, a picture with John Muller. I remember me and the colleague that went, we had some like custom t-shirt with a tweet that he had, and like we gave him one as well. So it was like, we were thinking about it beforehand. But obviously, I think networking, especially when it comes to conferences within SEO, is really valuable. And I think, when you can kind of branch out your network and meet other people who, you know, are very successful at what they do, get to know them, you know, so that they get to know you and you're not just a face that they've seen on Twitter, for instance. I feel like that's something that I missed, and it's something that, you know, I'm not going to make the same mistake going forward. But that's my story kind of just from the get-go.
Yeah, and I think that's a very common story that you hear people, you know, you jump down and you're like, yeah, I've seen this, and, you know, I came away and the talks weren't mind-blowing, and, you know, that's the general perception. But if you look around the SEO world, you'll see Judith Lewis, for example, at every Brighton SEO, and Alida at every Brighton SEO, whether they're speaking or not, by the way, you know, or, you know, various other guys, you know, John Mueller's always there, and everyone from the industry is always there, and there's obviously a reason for that. And it obviously took me several occasions to also peel back and understand how it works. You know, because I went to my first Brighton SEO, took the wife down, went to the conference, and walked around, went to one party, and got cornered by someone in the party who was just waffling in my ear, and didn't really make the most of it, and went up the road going, I don't know about that. But then obviously, after the first one, I had bumped into a few guys and done a few webinars with SEMrush and stuff like that. So the second time I went, I think I was down, and Andy Drinkwater was there, and there was a few other guys there, and I took a couple of my colleagues from the office down as well. And and before you knew it, that little network was growing and growing and growing. And you know, had a great time. You know, I don't think we actually went inside the conference building, but it was just a great few days. So we jumped down on the Wednesday, you know, met up with a few people on the Wednesday, had a few beers, spoke about a few different bits and bobs. Thursday, same thing again, out just, you know, meeting guys in coffee shops, and, you know, they're showing you their SaaS tool and, you know, whatever. And I think at the time, the SaaS tool guy was Content King. You know, it was Content King, and the guy's like, yeah, come and meet me, and we'll talk in the coffee shop, and, you know, got to know him, and I'm talking about Stephen Van Vessen for anyone who doesn't know Content King, and you know, I've had Stephen come to speak in Glasgow and all that ever since, but, you know, I got a free access to Content King. I understood what it was, and all of that kind of stuff. And, you know, you're building relationships there, and you know, spoke to Stephen for an hour or so over a coffee. You know, done a few other people, you know, meetings with people. Got drunk, couldn't make the conference. It was a real good laugh. Went out on the Friday night again, got really drunk again, and you know, people say, oh, it's just a booze fest, and it's not. My wife's like, you're always down at Brighton SEO, what the hell, and all that. And you're like, man, it's work, and it is work. And I think it's building those relationships with people. You know, people will talk to you if they've met you at a conference or whatever. You know, you don't just become friends with someone on Twitter. You don't become friends with someone in a webinar. It's sharing that beer with them, sharing some value with them as well. You know, saying like, you know, like Andy Drinkwater, me and Andy Drinkwater, for example. I think we've done a webinar once. We hooked up at Brighton SEO. Obviously, we like the kind of same jokes, and we kind of hit it off. You know, you just get on with someone, and they will become good friends since. But, you know, me and Andy Drinkwater have sat down and spoke about many things. He's taught me things, I've taught him things, and it's always about, you know, doing that and helping each other, and you know, not going in with some big ego, I know everything and all that stuff. You know, go down, learn, interact, network, share a beer, hook up with them after it, you know, jump on a Skype, jump on a Zoom. But I think that's the big thing. People are sometimes shy, or don't feel they can fit into the crowd. And what I would say from the outside looking in, because I've not been a public guy for too long. You know, it's only been three years, I think, since I done my first speaking event, and you know, I didn't know anyone in the SEO world as such, because I didn't do webinars, I didn't do anything. I just ran my agency. And what I would say is pretty much the SEO world is very welcoming and open to new people coming into the kind of circle. And taking you out for a beer or whatever. And I've met people, people look at, some of the people I maybe hook up with, and there'll be some people that you potentially think Craig would never be friends with that person, or that person would never be friends with Craig. And yeah, I've met some great people along the way. So I think it's great to build up those relationships. And then you can obviously just hook up with them on Facebook and say, do you want to come here? Do you want to do this? Do you want to jump in my podcast? Do you want to share links? Do you want to do this? Do you want to do that? And life just becomes easier. And that $400 you spent actually becomes worth tens of thousands of pounds. And obviously, if you're sharing, you're working with people, you do a good job, the potential for that to explode is unreal. And and it's not just about Brighton SEO; it's about doing it all over the world. And I've got some great friends in America and all that as well. As a result of hooking up with them at conferences. And as I say, I speak at conferences as well, because I also want to demonstrate knowledge and build a brand. But I think the great thing is the aftermath of a conference.
So what would you say in that case about, obviously, your experiences with conferences? What are some things that you don't particularly like about how they've been run? And I don't want you to name any names just for, because we don't want to name and shame people, but just generally, what are some things that you maybe didn't see as much of as you expected, or things that you would have preferred to have experienced or done in conferences?
So obviously different conferences have different quirks, but I think Christoph Semper hit the nail on the head yesterday. And I think I've had so many people, you ask anyone in this industry, right? What's the best thing about the conference? It's when the bar opens. Simple as that. Now, Christoph Semper said in a post something along the lines of, conferences are all about networking, yet the majority of the time is spent listening to talkers and pitch fests, or whatever you want to call them. Why do we not change the way the conferences work and maybe have less speakers, more networking? And it's obviously something we spoke about off air previously. Something, I'm just going to throw this idea out here, Itamar. And this is not something that's set in stone. It's just something we thought about. And I'd be curious to know the audience's feedback. So let us know in the comments or reach out or whatever. But say there was a conference in London or wherever, and we had 5 really good speakers, non-pitch fest, nothing like that, just 5 good speakers sharing what they're doing. And those speakers were on from, say, 10 in the morning till 1 in the afternoon. Just give them all 45 minutes each or something. Or, no, we have 2 on in the morning, stop for lunch, and then maybe have 2 on in the afternoon. And say 3 or 4 o'clock, we maybe have a charity boxing match where someone who absolutely detests me can maybe jump in a ring, and we could have a little kind of charity boxing match. Get the crowd interested, have a bit of fun with it. Then, maybe have, and I would want this conference to go on pretty much for the full day. But then after that, you could have something like 2 SEOs going head to head on stage, tearing strips off each other. Not on their physical appearance or anything, but in terms of their tactics, and a fight off on stage from an SEO point of view, saying, no, that's wrong, and here's why I think it's wrong. Look at this, look at that, look at that. And having a good debate that maybe, the audience can also get in about, and potentially some other stuff. I think, what we do like is to see a lot of networking, a lot of excuses for beers, but also to have a bit of fun. And I think, something doesn't even have to be boxing, by the way, because I know people say, oh, that's dangerous or whatever. Something else that's just sprung to mind. And I remember I was on holiday a few years ago, and we were in the hotel, and every Thursday night they had this kind of crazy, it was like a disco guy or whatever. But what this crazy disco guy had for an hour was the audience standing up on this kind of platform thing, and you would hit each other with the kind of inflated pole kind of thing to knock them off their balance so that they'd fall down. You could have stuff like that, 2 SEOs going head to head, trash talking, saying, you know, I'm going to get you and all that stuff. You know, similar to the way Conor McGregor does it. Have a bit of fun with something like that, or a charity boxing match if someone's, you know, two guys or whatever are healthy and fit enough and want to go for that. And, you know, various other things like that where the audience can watch, they can have a beer, they can, you know, have a bet even, you know, make it friendly, charitable, and all that kind of stuff. And I think things like that, having fun at conferences, and I'll tell you why. You know, I think that works because Judith Lewis, who goes to a lot of conferences, just pinged me there. I'm due to go to Poland. Well, I'll have been in Poland by the time this goes live, but the conference is, you know, we'll do, I think there's 4 or 5 speakers, and then we go out on a boat. We also go paintballing. We do some other stuff. And we have some party times as well. And it's over a 2 or 3 day period. So there's plenty of time for those attendees to go up to the person that they like, you know, the speaker that they like, and pick their brain and, you know, show me this, show me that, show me that. So these people are paying a fortune to go there, and they've got that ability to come up to whoever, like Michael Suski from Suffer SEO is going to be there. You can go up and chat his door and say, Michael, can I have 10 minutes of your time? You know, talk to me about Suffer, show me how this shit works properly. You know, I'm struggling here to rank for this. And Michael's there, and he's got those 2 or 3 days where he's chilled out, relaxed, and will help you. And that's where people are getting the real benefit. It's not a massive conference, the one in Poland, but, you know, people pay good money to go there, but they have full access to the speakers, and they're also there to relax, enjoy themselves. You know, we all stay in all these log cabins, all right next to each other. There's free beer, there's free everything. It's a great way to do a conference. And I think what Christoph Semper said is, you know, maybe it should be less of the pitch fests and more of the networking and fun and games. That's just my perception of it, though. But what do you think? Do you think that sounds like fun?
I mean, it sounds like a conference I would go to be honest. I think, yeah, you know, when you think of the SEO industry and the different characters that you've got in there, and, you know, sometimes, and we're flooded with information all the time. You know, we're flooded with webinars and people speaking about all sorts of different topics all the time. You know, this isn't some rare occasion where people do speak about certain topics. And so, you know, yeah, it would be nice to have something that's more laid back, kind of less focused, less heavily focused on people speaking, but more about getting people more interacted with one another, getting groups of people who may have never or only may have seen each other through Twitter or LinkedIn, but actually, you know, sharing some kind of, you know, bonding in person. I feel like it's always going to be a different experience, and, you know, that can end up in a lot of great opportunities for both parties involved. And, you know, it's something that, as well as including the fun in there, because, you know, we all just, at the end of the day, you know, we're not all robots, we're not machines, you know, we're human beings. You know, people like to have a chilled out time and have a fun time, and just something nice to remember, really.
Yeah, I think that is what, and I'm not saying every conference doesn't have fun, just certain conferences do seem to be rammed full of speakers, and the reality is no one's actually getting in and listening to these speakers. You know, that is the truth of the matter, and anyone out there will tell you. Like, I went to see 1 or 2 talks of the guys I actually wanted to see, and, you know, obviously there's a lot of gap fillers in there, and at a lot of conferences are paid speaking slots or sponsorship speaking slots and all that kind of stuff. And I think that detracts from the ability to learn, because it's smoke and mirrors enough when you're trying to learn SEO without then being fed pitch fests, and you know, as a novice, you don't really look at that, and you're not like, that guy's paid to be there and telling me this tool's the best thing in the world. You know, you actually believe it. So I think you know, conferences can be tweaked, but obviously conferences are commercial business, and, you know, I'm not a professional conference organizer. I can only give feedback on the stuff that I've done, and obviously I've spoke at many conferences across the world, and they all have their own little quirks. And I think conferences are now becoming not so much conferences, but more of a get together. And I think for me, although I will speak at bigger conferences, I think I'm going to go down the route of going to the likes of the ones in Poland where I can interact with people and become friends with people and network with people, because it's also not about me and speaking. Obviously, I can share the knowledge and experience that I've got, but I need to learn as well. And, I need to keep on top of my game. I can't be the speaker and then not network with anyone or talk to anyone. So, every time I go out and I meet a guy in a bar or a woman or whoever it may be, I'm getting little bits of nuggets from everyone. And that's what keeps me sharp, doing what I'm doing and trying and testing different stuff. And I think that is certainly the type of conferences that I personally enjoy, and the ones that I've personally been going to for the last year. I don't speak a lot at the UK conference circuit anymore. I've done a few, Search Leeds, Brighton, and a few other bits, but I try and absorb the kind of other ones and other people's ways of thinking as well. And I think that's also a good, healthy thing to do. Go and see what other guys are doing in other parts of the world. And there's some crazy guys. Even that one in Poland, the guys are absolute crazy. Very nice guys, by the way. Again, saying crazy with the greatest respect. Crazy guys doing some crazy stuff in some crazy niches. And at the end of the day, if you can't take anything away from these guys, then you're insane. So try them out as well. Try and go to these different ones with those little quirks where we'll get out in boats or going paintballing or whatever, because it's all good fun.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's, you kind of mention things that a lot of people would potentially want to do, but I guess if you've never been to a conference, you might be comfortable only going with some of the big names of, let's say Brighton and things like that. And I think that's all well and good. There's no problems with that. But yeah, definitely more, trying different things out, going to different types of conferences. And obviously, it'd be interesting to hear your thoughts about, people watching this video in terms of, what would you like to see? So the ideas that Craig mentioned before, and that's something we talked a little bit before we started recording the video, but what would you think about something like that, like a day out, kind of a day out SEO, SEO day out in London or something like that, where you've got, fewer speakers, all very good, sharing excellent knowledge, and then, a lot more of the fun, a lot more of the networking and charity events and things like that. It'd be interesting to hear your thoughts. And I think we can wrap it up there. So, thanks everyone for watching this episode of SEO Tells. Hope you enjoyed it. On behalf of Craig and myself, leave a like, rating below if you enjoy the video, and subscribe. And we'll see you in the next episode.